Clerk, please call the roll.
Regent Bailing?
Here.
Regent Peterson?
Here.
Regent Atwell?
Here.
Regent Delgado? Regent Evers?
Here.
Regent Greeby?
Here.
Regent Hall? Regent Jones?
Here.
Regent Klein? Regent Milner?
You here?
Regent Mueller?
Here.
Regent Peterson? Regent Plant?
Here.
Regent Ring?
Here.
Regent Stile?
Here.
Regent Tyler?
Here.
Regent Whitburn?
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Before we consider any items on today's agenda, are there board members who wish to declare any conflicts of interest regarding today's agenda?
Yes.
Regent Evers?
I will not be voting on any of the contracts.
Thank you, Regent Evers. Any other conflicts? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and make a note of that for the roll. And we just ask that you recuse yourself from discussing those select items. Let's get started. Good afternoon, everyone, and it's good to see you all again. Additionally, thank you, Chancellor Ford. I always look forward to coming to this campus. It's always so very well managed, and it's just great to be back in Chancellor Ford's kingdom. So Chancellor Ford also has their 50-year anniversary coming up. In fact, the event is I think it's next Saturday. So I know Regents have been invited. Hopefully a number of us can make it. And truly I know it'll be a very successful gala. We have a very busy agenda, so let's get started. But before we do that, President Cross has some introductions.
Sure. For those of you that aren't baseball fans, too bad. So, good afternoon. I'm pleased to introduce Jackie Joseph Silverstein. Jackie, there she is. Please stand. Jackie will now serve as the executive officer in charge of the UW Colleges and Extension. In this new role, Dr. Silverstein is responsible for oversight of services specified in the MOUs between the restructured receiving institutions in UW Colleges and Extension. She will also support Extension's shared governance until it is fully transitioned to the UW system. She has a PhD from the City University of New York in biological sciences and most recently served as the UW College's regional executive officer for the Southeast region. So before joining UW Colleges, she served as the executive vice president and provost at Cuyahoga Community College in Cleveland. So welcome, Jackie. Thanks for doing this. I am also pleased to introduce Jack Jablonski. Jack joins us as the Executive Director of Public and Community Affairs. Jack comes to the UW system after nearly 2 decades in legislative affairs, communications, and public management. Most recently, he held positions with the Governor's Office as Director of Communications and Deputy Chief of Staff. He previously served as Chief of Staff for State Senator Sheila Harsdorf, a longtime supporter of the UW system. Please join me in welcoming Jack. Back to you, President Bailing.
Thank you, President Cross. Now we're going to hear from our host, Chancellor Deborah Ford. Chancellor, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Regent President Bailing. So President Cross, Regent President Bailing, Regent Vice President Peterson, members of the Board of Regents, colleagues from across the great University of Wisconsin system, and community partners who you will hear from in just a moment, welcome. The University of Wisconsin-Parkside is so proud to be hosting the October Board of Regents and celebrating our 50th anniversary here. So a couple of thank yous before I start some formal remarks. First, you know that when you plan any event, and particularly when you host the Board of Regents, it takes many, many, many hands. And so I would like for you to join with me in thanking all of the folks who have made today and tomorrow possible, because without them, we would not be standing here today. I'd also like to thank two of our legislators, Representative Peter Barca and Representative Todd Onstead, for joining us today, and thank you for your work. And then I have to point out, you just love it when the university is featured in the newspaper. In the Journal-Times, the Racine newspaper front page is a story and photo from the Digital Fabrication and Design Lab here at UW-Parkside, where we started our meeting last evening. And so kudos to folks. I'll pass this around so you can take a look.
All right.
So I hope as you were coming into the ballroom that you had an opportunity to take a look at the table right outside. And we have documents and proclamations from the mayor of the city of Kenosha and UW-Parkside graduate John Antaramian, the county executive of Kenosha County, and UW-Parkside graduate Jim Cruiser, the mayor of the city of Racine, Corey Mason, the county executive of Racine County, Jonathan Delagrave, and the president of the Village of Summers, George Stoner. The proclamations honor September 16th as Founders Day at the University of Wisconsin-Parkside. Monday, September 16th, 1968, UW-Parkside welcomed its first students. 50 years ago, this great university began serving southeastern Wisconsin, the state of Wisconsin, and beyond. On behalf of the students, alumni, faculty, staff, and community partners, and on behalf of the people we serve here in southeastern Wisconsin and around the world, I am proud to welcome you to the University of Wisconsin-Parkside during our 50 years celebration. Our celebration theme, as you may have noticed, is Bold Beginnings, Future Focus. Allow me to share a quick look back at the bold beginnings of the University of Wisconsin-Parkside. In 1965, the Wisconsin Senate passed Senate Bill 48, calling for the expansion of the University of Wisconsin to two new locations, one in Green Bay and one in the Racine-Kenosha area. Irvin Wiley, chair of the UW-Madison's History Department, was chosen as the first chancellor of the university to be placed here. And he set to work finding a suitable piece of land to build a university. A site selection committee assessed land from various places around Racine and Kenosha, looking for a location with ample space and easy access to the highways. The township of Summers proved to be an ideal location situated right between the target communities of Racine and Kenosha. The land that would become the University of Wisconsin-Parkside campus was purchased in 1966 and the planning began. The St. Louis architecture firm of Helmuth, Obata, and Kosbaum Incorporated was selected to design the campus, with founding partner Guy Obata taking the position of lead architect. After several months of drafting designs, Obata submitted his final plans and construction began. Groundbreaking ceremonies took place on November 21st, 1967, with guests from around the UW system and local communities in attendance. I have actually met some of the folks who were here for that groundbreaking. While the first buildings were under construction, a nearby farmhouse served as the chancellor's office. Chancellor Wiley occupied the temporary space until the Library Learning Center, which is now Wiley Hall and named in his honor. Greenquist Hall provided space for classrooms and labs, and Talent Hall, named in honor of the UW-Kenosha Center Dean, Bernard Talent, housed the administrative offices. The University of Wisconsin-Parkside, here at this location, opened its doors to students for the first time in the fall of 1969. As I mentioned, the first UW-Parkside students took classes during the 1968-69 academic year, and those classes were held at the former center campuses in Racine and Kenosha. Students registering for classes in 1969 did so in Greenquist Hall, while the final touches were being put on the building. Classes on the new campus, this location, began in September 1969 with 2,911 students enrolled. Parkside's initial academic structure was designed to emphasize industrial programs. The university was organized under the School of Modern Industry and the College of Science and Society. The focus on industry was intended to prepare students for positions in the robust manufacturing sector that was southeastern Wisconsin 50 years ago. It's interesting to me how the demands of our region 50 years ago are similar to what is happening just minutes from our campus today. Another unique feature of Parkside's early years was its three-part campus structure. In 1968, the two-year UW-Kenosha and UW-Racine centers were under the control of the main campus. Shuttle service was available between the three campuses, Summers, Kenosha, and Racine, allowing students easy access to classes and resources at each location. In 1970, the first 36 graduates received their diplomas in Greenquist Hall. More than 500 guests from the surrounding communities attended the commencement ceremonies. The very first person to be handed a UW-Parkside diploma was George Becker. Other members of the first graduating class were Bob Wirch. And Bob has served as the state of Wisconsin for more than 26 years as an assembly representative and a state senator. And Isom Fern Jr. was our first African-American graduate. Today, the Fern House at UW-Parkside, named in Isom's honor, is an on-campus living experience focused on improving the retention and graduation rate for African-American men. One important reason for founding the university was to provide knowledge and talent for businesses and organizations in southeastern Wisconsin. Many successful companies from the late 1960s, like Case New Holland, Snap-on, SC Johnson, and others, form the foundation for today's growing economy. 50 years later, an important role for the University of Wisconsin-Parkside remains the same: provide knowledge and talent for vibrant businesses and organizations across our region. So whether the calendar reads 1968 or 2018, the marketplace demands individuals who will be relevant and valued contributors today and decades from now. An important element to developing that talent and reaching that goal is through university and business partnerships. UW-Parkside is connected to and working with leading businesses and organizations in our area. And I know that you will be interested in hearing about those valued partnerships directly from our partners. So at this time, it gives me great pleasure to introduce the president and founder of Kane Communications Group, Kimberly Kane. Ms. Kane is an experienced professional in public, community, and government relations, internal and employee engagement programs, crisis communications, and communications research. Kimberly is an award-winning healthcare journalist and is currently serving on the UW-Milwaukee College of Health Sciences Advisory Board, and very happy to report that she also serves on the UW-Parkside Foundation Board of Directors. Kimberly will moderate a panel with some of our best partners so that you can hear directly from them about the impact UW-Parkside makes in our region, not only today, but well into the future. So please join me in welcoming Kimberly Kane.
Chancellor Ford, thank you so much for that introduction. As a member of the UW-Parkside Foundation Board of Directors, I am very familiar with our history, but it was wonderful to see the overview of how far we've come in just 50 years. And Regents, thank you so much for your commitment and your contributions to shepherding our education system forward, a system that impacts hundreds of thousands of lives every year, businesses, communities, and certainly our global economy. As a member of the UW-Parkside Foundation Board of Directors, you can imagine it's energizing working with Chancellor Ford. It's energizing for all of us on the Foundation Board as we look at ways to activate the Parkside vision through the relationships that we develop and the partnerships that we develop on behalf of UW-Parkside. And that's what we're here to talk about, the partnerships and the impact that those partnerships are having on our region here in Southeast Wisconsin. As I spent some time with each one of our panelists preparing for this interview and talking with Chancellor Ford as well, I was really impressed to learn about the impact these partnerships have had on us. an impact that has led Parkside to graduating more students year after year, to enabling Parkside to become the most diverse campus in the University of Wisconsin system, that helps graduates graduate from UW-Parkside with degrees and enter the workforce ready to contribute at the highest level with companies in our region. These partnerships solve problems that global corporations face, from finding and hiring talent to research, innovation, and roll up your sleeves, on the ground collaboration. And these partnerships have created a pathway for individuals and families who are in poverty to leave poverty and earn university degrees. I think that's pretty exciting. So today, we are at the center of what many call a mega region. We are in a global economy where the competition is fierce and the stakes are high. And all of us know not everyone is a winner today. And I think that's part of what we're here to talk about, is how we can create partnerships that enable people to be successful. In talking with one of our panelists, he really phrased the relationships today between universities and businesses as relationships that are changing and need to change. These relationships, in some cases, can really become a nexus for opportunity. But what do these partnerships look like? How are these partnerships formed? What outcomes can these partnerships produce? And are there lessons that we can all learn that the UW system can turn into best practices that can help businesses, individuals, and communities achieve critical goals? So, as Chancellor Ford mentioned, we have a panel of experts who are here to shed some light on all of these questions and more. We'll have the chance to meet them in just a moment. We'll have about 40 minutes to have, I think, a pretty interactive discussion. So as I look at all of our panelists, as you know, I have prepared questions for each of you. But what I would love to encourage you to do is interact with each other. So if someone on the panel says something you think is particularly interesting or you want to expand upon that, please feel free. The goal here is to share ideas and to really share some best practices. And then I think John over here at the back, John Mielke, will keep us on time. We've got about 40 minutes to get started, or to get through this. Let's begin by having each of you then introduce yourselves, talk about the partnership that you have with Parkside. And we'll begin over here with Kelly Semeru. Kelly is with SC Johnson.
Thank you, Kimberly. Kelly Semeru, I'm a Senior Vice President at SC Johnson. I've been at SC Johnson for 18 years. We are an international global consumer packaged goods company. Iconic brands like Ziploc, Off, Glade, Raid, Windex, Scrubbing Bubbles. I hope all of you have that in your homes. We also are embarking on large large growth vectors for the company. We've just purchased Method, Mrs. Myers, a lot of health and wellness brands. So we are a company that leans on Chancellor Ford very often for three major reasons. First and foremost, for recruiting wonderful talent. The second thing is that being a family-owned company, we care very much about the communities that we live in. And in Racine, where our international headquarters are, we have had a system there, an educational system, that's not the best. So we've leaned on Deb in many ways when we chartered a school. Thank you very much for what you did for our charter school there when SC Johnson invested more than $12 million to set up a charter school. And Chancellor Ford was great in making sure that Parkside was able to help us with that. And we also work with the institution on many literacy programs, because as you probably well know, in Racine, we have many schools that we are working very hard with Jeff and many people on this panel to increase and build up. But we care very much about the literacy rate. And oftentimes we'll come to Deb when we've got literacy programs and we reach into the institution to help us with those literacy programs. I could go on and on and on. We've invested in the institution. We believe strongly in the institution. It helps us in so many different ways. We wouldn't be who we are today without Parkside. Hundreds of graduates work at SCJ, internships, but more importantly, we're recruiting people into this region from all over the world. And to have an institution like this is very important in all of that recruiting type of work that we do. So I'll turn it over to my colleague from CASE.
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Brian French, Head of Human Resources for the NAFTA region for CNH Industrial. For those of you that aren't familiar with CNH Industrial, it's two major brands that you may be familiar with are CASE IH, the detractors, as well as CASE Construction, and then New Holland brand as well. We've had a presence in Racine for over 175 years. And for the last 50, obviously, we've had a strong relationship with Parkside. And when I look at our organization, I did some research prior to coming here to understand how many of our employees truly are Parkside grads. It's one of we have 8,500 employees in the region, over 70,000 throughout the globe. UW-Parkside has of the top 4 graduates of all of our employees in the region. So it's over 140. And so that speaks to really 3 things. It speaks to the value they add to our company, speaks to the respect we have for this organization, and also speaks to the community, because I really think it looks at it, it's a 3-part triangle. We as an employer need valuable employees. Obviously the region needs people that are invested in the community. And then the bridge to that is the university that educates and provides those employees that. I would say our relationship with Parkside is really evolving. Historically, as I spoke to, we've recruited here actively. We've had co-ops, we've had interns for many, many years. It's changed over the last, I'd say, 2 years. And that's a result of the reaching out from Chancellor Ford to our prior COO. And as a result of that, we've changed how we viewed this campus. We have lots of choices, right? But we've decided to make an emphasis on UW-Parkside. One example of that is we had two individuals who were students here. They did a co-op and an internship with us, and then they were able to go to Italy for a similar co-op to experience that global reach that we can provide as an organization, and also provide them a perspective. And so one of the employees then became a full-time employee of ours. So as we look forward, as we try to evolve that relationship, that's one example of that. And then we're committed to really have our senior leadership. Our COO currently took the lead from the prior COO, said our leadership team needs to be a part of UW-Parkside. The competition you read in the paper all the time about the strive for talent, we need to create effective and strong relationships with not every university, but a few, and we chose UW-Parkside.
Michael Bond. I am with Snap-on Incorporated. I'm responsible for the Supplier Diversity Program at Snap-on. At Snap-on, we have started an initiative. We have a diversity initiative, if you will, in which we developed a diversity council made up of supply chain, human resources, community, and innovation. And our purpose is to develop channels to increase the diversity of our organization, the supply chain, human resources, and in addition, to have an impact on our innovation processes. Snap-on has had a tremendous history with the University of Wisconsin-Parkside. We've been there since 1933, when it was part of the extension program. In 1968, when Parkside was developed, we were there also supporting the university with scholarships and providing internship opportunities. The value that Parkside is providing to Snap-on is we recognize that Parkside is a ecosystem, if you will, in which they're in Racine and Kenosha. Racine and Kenosha is one of the most diverse communities in the state of Wisconsin. And I'm not just talking ethnic, okay? I'm also talking about the fact it's agriculture, it's also manufacturing. Racine and Kenosha and Summers and all points in between represent what our customers look like. And so Nick Pinchuk and Snap-on recognize that Parkside could be a tremendous partner of ours in developing diverse talent in which we could infuse Snap-on and position the company globally in terms of our customer base. And so they've been a tremendous asset to us. And next I will turn it over to my dear good friend that I just met, Jeffrey.
Good afternoon. So my name is Professor Jeffrey Medine. I'm a UW-Parkside graduate and a former soccer All-American. So I have literally donated sweat and blood to UW-Parkside. Currently, I'm the inaugural Mac Fund Chair of Pediatrics and Biochemistry at the Medical College of Wisconsin. I am the principal investigator on a first-in-the-world gene therapy trial where we're treating an inherited disease by using a virus to put genes back into cells. And we're treating our 4th patient next week. So it's very exciting times. And the reason I mention that is because our partnership, and sorry, another piece of that is that has recently been monetized by a company, and we're actually moving towards phase 2 and phase 3 trials with a biotech startup in Boston. The reason I mention that is because our partnership involves, for the last 6 years, I've taken UW-Parkside students into my lab every summer to give them exposure to what cutting-edge, high-powered science looks like in a medical setting. And so this was an opportunity that wasn't available when I was here, and so I wanted to make sure over the years that we're able to take people and actually show them in a clinical medical center what it looks like to do cutting-edge clinical trials.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Tatiana Buchanan, and I'm the Executive Director with Building Our Future, also alum of UW-Parkside, class of 2000, so it's nice to be back, 18 years. Building Our Future. In August of 2016, Kenosha County created its own unique partnership using the Strive Together framework to ensure the success of every child from cradle to career. And UW-Parkside has been a thought partner since the beginning on how to get better results for our students. Parkside faculty, students, staff are supporting the work of Building Our Future through their expertise and experience, sharing of data, local data, and the willingness to get involved in the community. And it was actually in this room that we had our first community summit of 130, 150 in attendance for Kenosha County to give the thumbs up or the thumbs down if they wanted to embrace this initiative to support all of our students. And you'll hear more about that with Jeff Neubauer, our colleagues in Racine County.
Thank you, Tatiana. My name is Jeff Neubauer. I'm the Executive Director of Higher Expectations for Racine County, and like Building Our Future, we're part of the National Strive Together Network. We work, as we say in Racine, from career to cradle to try and create a fully capable and employed Racine County workforce. And that's a big deal for us because Racine, as you may know, has had the highest unemployment rate in the state of Wisconsin since 1990 and pretty much an unbroken string. And so we want to create capability in our residents so that they can earn a living and be empowered in the economy. Our experiences with UW-Parkside in this work have been amazing and unique. There is no daylight between Parkside and our work at Higher Expectations, and I borrow that metaphor from the Chancellor. Excuse me. And over time, her extraordinary leadership has been realized in any number of ways. She has taken offered up one of the most senior and experienced and capable executives on her team, Deanne Pacell, who is half-time with our partnership in Racine and half-time with Parkside and also works with Building Our Future to advance enrolling more students and graduating more students. She has literally walked the walk and invested in our work with Deanne. The second thing I'd like to highlight briefly, and this is work that Deanne did in conjunction with Building Our Future and others, is she applied for a Talent Hub grant, which was one of 17 in the country that was awarded on a very, very competitive basis. And this is designed to bring together folks from different sectors in our community to get more people to enroll and to graduate from post-secondary experiences. And we draw the through line, which is really critical and isn't often done, from K-12 through the technical college system to the UW system and then into business and industry. And it's leading work across the country, and it's happening here in large measure because of the work that Deanne does and because of the investment that Parkside has made in our partnership. One other amazing contribution of many that I could cite, and I'm going to burden you with a PowerPoint that I'm not going to walk you through, but I'll give you for your own purposes as you see fit, and a newspaper story, is the research done by a professor here, Professor Norm Cloutier. When we asked the question, why is it that Racine has had such a high unemployment rate for such a long time, and what would we need to do to solve that problem, Professor Cloutier and one of his students, Carolyn Eastman, took a deeper dive on that question, and they came back with an answer which we were not anticipating, and that is that half of the gap between Racine's unemployment rate and the state's unemployment rate could potentially be attributed to single mothers who lacked high school or post-secondary attainment and who most often are either African American or Hispanic and Latino. That work led us down a path of researching how to address those issues, and we discovered nationally something called the two-generation strategy, where you work with moms and their children simultaneously, and led us to apply for a national grant through the Strive Together Network on behalf of the Ballmer Group. Steve Ballmer of Microsoft funded this national investment, and we were awarded $1.5 million to work on that over the next 3 years. That would not have happened but for Parkside. So the work that we are doing in Racine County is potentially groundbreaking in the country, and is not going to just affect women and their children and our community, but could become a national model, and that's all because of Parkside. So we could not be more happy with the partnership that we have here, and it's very meaningful and extraordinarily impactful.
Wonderful. Panelists, thank you very much for the introductions and the overview of, sounds like some pretty extraordinary work that you're doing with Parkside, from research and transformation of programming to internships, some creative community relations and diversity programs, becoming the university of choice in talent acquisition. There are some very creative and I think organically grown partnerships that you've created with Parkside. What I'm interested in learning about is how your partnerships developed. Some universities have advisory boards, which are fairly formalized, where you're advising deans or the university. How did your partnerships begin with UW-Parkside? And has your relationship always been as clear as it seems today, or has it evolved over time? Kelly, why don't we begin with you? Sure. And I think one of the reasons this is important is as individuals are listening in and they're looking at ways to build partnerships with businesses and businesses looking at building partnerships with universities, you can give us a bit of a jump start.
Absolutely. Thanks, Kimberly. I would say that it's hard to sort of, or difficult to say when our relationship started with Parkside. I would posit that it started back the day that the ground was turned over for this institution. Being a family-owned company, we care deeply about the community, and we try to do everything we can to understand our community, have relationships in the community, and make the community better because we're here. I can speak about our relevance in my role and how much I work with Parkside. So I would say that Parkside's leadership is very much a part of this community. They've woven themselves into the community. I see the chancellor just as much as I see some of my family members sometimes. And she's involved in almost every community group involved in education, from K through Gateway to Parkside here. So I believe the strength of our relationship is really built around the leadership of the university. We're welcomed. We're asked for our thoughts. We're asked for funding. We're asked to contribute to sort of the gestalt of the university. But it's a very symbiotic relationship because, as I said before, there's lots of things where we've leaned into the university. You know, starting a charter school when we did was really very new in the state of Wisconsin. And Parkside has the charter of that, thanks to this table, and you've extended that as well. And many other things where we lean in. So it's a very symbiotic relationship. I think for other institutions to be involved in the community is key.
Brian.
Take a similar perspective. You know, our relationship, it has always been there, and with Parkside. However, I say the proactive response by the leadership team here, Chancellor Ford and her executive team, reaching out to us. You know, we are, not that you want to be, but companies like people can sometimes be a prisoner of your history. And you go to the same schools that you go to, and you go here, and Parkside was always part of that process of talent acquisition, the career fairs and things like that. But really, it was Chancellor Ford reaching out to our prior CEO saying, we can help you with the challenges you face. And everyone obviously is aware of the good news that the Southeast Wisconsin region has with Foxconn, but it poses unique challenges for other employers to find the right people. And that proactive reaching out just so happened when we were looking as an executive team to say, how do we create more substantial relationships with universities in the region that we want to have reduce the number that we have, but focus on specific ones. And so my suggestion or experience, I would say, with UW-Parkside is we may not have said we want to make that commitment with UW-Parkside if the leadership team hadn't come to us and said, we can help you with your challenges. Come see us. You know, there are so many fine schools in this region, but I think it's what really turned and got us our attention was that leadership team coming to us saying, we can help you.
And that was an important nuance, Brian, when you and I were talking on the phone earlier this week. You said, you know, Parkside didn't come to, again, just talk about a job fair or ask for a contribution to the foundation. Parkside came to you with a solution, and that was unusual to you.
It is. I mean, usually when people come with a solution, they also say, and here's the check,
right,
that you need to pay to sign for it. This was really a symbiotic relationship. And one also, you can't forget about the community, right? There's been several people have talked about the challenges of the Racine area. We, our employers here, our employees here, 127 have been in Parkside. There's that relationship, that kind of net that connects us all. And so when they came to us and we took the step, and that's how, you know, we got the initial class of interns that got to experience here and also experience our global headquarters in return. And so those relationships will continue to evolve and grow, but it's only because of that proactive engagement.
Michael, you talked about how your partnership at Snap-on has expanded with UW-Parkside. Also, it seems that there's been a long history, but it's evolved recently.
Yes, it has evolved. We've always had that history with UW-Parkside, but recently, I'd say about 5 years ago, we captured the energy that's coming from this campus. We recognized that we were supporting the University of Wisconsin-Parkside, and that they had something that they can offer us. At Snap-on, just like Case New Holland and SC Johnson, I'm sure you're all doing business with the federal government. You're all filling out the exact same reports I am, okay? Well, at Snap-on, we recognize from a human resource standpoint, from a supply chain standpoint, and from a communication standpoint that we all had the same struggles, okay? And we all were in silos, if you will. Now, we got together, and our person who's responsible for community relations is Terry Ruck. She was the one that introduced us to Chancellor Ford. And Chancellor and Parkside developed what's called they had a multicultural committee, and I was asked to participate on that. And so when Snap-on suddenly became active on that multicultural committee, suddenly Parkside came alive, if you will. Okay, it's no longer we're just dropping off a check and we're sponsoring lunches and dinners and, you know, other chicken dinners, but we're actually trying to capture the energy in this community to impact change. And so we were able to take that energy back to Snap-on, present a strategy to Nick Pinchuk, who basically blessed it. And so now we're going forth with this strategy. So ultimately what's happening is we've positioned Parkside as our partner in terms of expanding our diversity processes within Kenosha and Racine.
And you mentioned to me as well, Michael, that even beyond diversity requirements, your customers are diverse. And so identifying a partner like Parkside who can help you build a diverse kind of talent pool, right, who reflects your audience is more important than ever if we're competing on that global scale.
Absolutely. The thing is, Snap-on is a tool manufacturer, okay, and diagnostic equipment. If you go inside of a garage, remember back in the day when you pull your car in, your parents would come in with this big hulking machine and they set up the, to do the diagnostic. Well, Snap-on manufactures that now, and this is about as big as a tablet, okay? Everything that's within a garage, Snap-on manufactures. And so what we're doing is we're taking that ecosystem in the garage and taking it into the industrial space. A number of our customers are asking us to develop supply chains and an employee base that reflects their customers, so that they're basically asking us to share their values. We have an innovation center at Snap-on, and we bring our customers in. And one of the concerns is the fact that we were presenting a monolithic view of the company, okay? And so going into the 21st, well, we're in the 21st century, something has to change. And so we're developing these processes to impact the structure of the company, basically.
Wonderful. Professor Medin, you grew up here at Parkside in many ways, and now you're bringing students from UW-Parkside into your lab. Talk about how that partnership has evolved.
Yeah, so it really evolved from a grassroots level of collaboration, like the best scientific interactions really do. And it started 6 years ago when I was at the University of Toronto, and in discussions with Dr. Tracy Lee here, we realized and acknowledged that there's a fantastic group of very well-trained students here. Let's put them in an environment, best in Canada students, and see how they compete and see how their knowledge looks and lines up with students from McGill, UBC, U of T, etc. And then when I moved to the Medical College of Wisconsin, when I was recruited there, we also continued the program. The summer programs that these students are getting into take less than 10% of applicants. These are fantastic students and the Parkside students compete amazingly well. And so my whole purpose in this was to say, okay, great, you got this basic training, but the field is evolving and changing on a daily basis. How do you stay relevant? How do you stay current when biomedical research is just moving so fast? And that is to have a very solid foundation, which the students from here do, and they can compete. Let's throw them in and make them think on their feet and see if they can then take things to the next level. And so that's how our partnership came on.
When I listen to what you're saying, and I think about some of the recent research that was released here in the state of Wisconsin about test scores and student readiness, demonstrate to us there's a ways that some students have to go before they're ready to be thriving in environments like this. So coming to Tatiana and to Jeff, talk about how your relationship formed with Parkside, but also talk about how the work you're doing with Parkside today is helping to prepare youth to enter Professor Medin's lab.
Well, it was Chancellor Ford that introduced the Strive Together initiative to us in Kenosha County. So Jean Moran, our executive sponsor from the business world, had launched this network. And it was Chancellor Ford that connected Jean to Jeff and Racine and had conversations. And so together as a community, we agree that it's important to have a shared vision, sharing student level data and using data as a continuous improvement. And so Parkside is involved in all of our outcome areas, from smart beginnings, early grade reading, high school graduation, post-secondary, and then career prep. In Kenosha County, we also have a big emphasis on community engagement too. And so not only are we working with Parkside and our colleagues in Racine Higher Expectations in Gateway and Carthage and others in Herzing to look at post-secondary attainment and completion. You know, I've had conversations with Chancellor Ford and some of her staff as well that are involved, for example, with early grade reading. In January this year, we released our baseline report for Kenosha County. So we serve all 12 school districts, KUSD, and then the 11 west of the interstate. And at that time, based on the Ford exam, our baseline for 2016-2017, our reading proficiency by third grade in Kenosha County was at 45%. Based on the Ford exam that was released now and open to the public for this year, of this past school year, 2017-2018, our reading proficiency now is at 39% for Kenosha County. So it actually went down 6 percentage points. And we also look at math as well, 8th grade reading proficiency. So I say that is that we're really working with Parkside as a thought partner, providing that expertise and research and how do all of our children succeed from the day one, entering kindergarten on the first day of school, while they're in the K-12 system, that they're succeeding and that they're immediately ready to go on to that next step, whether if it's college or that career. So there's a lot of work to do, but I am proud to say that we have a lot of great leadership in this community. And we not only work with our colleagues in Racine, Strive Together is in 4 counties in the state of Wisconsin. So in Milwaukee, they're known as Milwaukee Succeeds. In Green Bay, Achieve Brown County, and then us too in the Southeast region. So we get together quite often, and Parkside has been a great thought partner in all of this.
Wonderful. Jeff, I'm going to nuance that question for you just a little bit because I'm getting time cues. So, you know, universities, I think we traditionally think of them as educating students. We think of them as very focused forward on research and innovation. But the work that you're describing that you're doing with UW-Parkside and Chancellor Ford is beyond that. I mean, talk about the importance of universities collaborating with community-based organizations to really build that capacity and innovate in the community.
Great question, thank you. So recently, Chancellor Ford invited me down a couple weeks ago to have breakfast with her and her terrific provost, Rob Dukoff, who's over here, who is a great partner in the work, and who has literally traveled the country with us looking at best practices for how we can advance and improve upon graduation rates and eliminate disparities between different groups. And we talked about how we can take this grant that I referenced earlier about the 2-generation strategy and dig more deeply. The partnership that I talked about with Professor Cloutier and his student Carolyn Eastman really opened incredible insights for us and allowed us to compete nationally to get that money to bring it here because we allow data to drive our decisions, just as Tatiana has described. But Chancellor Ford and Provost Dukoff said, why should we stop there? Let's think about other kind of research and other faculty on this campus. What about sociology? What about education? What about people who are training to be social workers? We should engage the faculty and students potentially across the university to come together around what we call a network in our trade of people from the community, community-based organizations, other educational institutions. Critically important are our private sector partners, and Kelly and Brian are both serving on our, what we call our leadership table, which is our board of directors with Chancellor Ford and others, to look at a more holistic and deep understanding of these issues so that we can help these women who have been left behind and frankly, their children, to break that cycle of poverty and to recreate for them the kind of economic mobility that we have historically had in this country, but which has not been universally shared. So without Parkside and the deep faculty and student engagement, I don't think we would make nearly the progress that we're going to make.
Wonderful. Follow up, please.
Go ahead, Michael.
I'd like to follow up on what Jeffrey, my friend over here, mentioned. Ultimately, when you talk about the partnership with Snap-on and Parkside, the University of Wisconsin Parkside is an educational facility, but it ultimately comes down to the students, okay? Now, I can sit here and rattle off the statistics, you know, the fact that a large number of percentage come from single-parent households or struggling environments. 60% of the students come from Kenosha and Racine. 48% of the income in 2017 class were from underrepresented communities. Snap-on is an innovative company, okay? One of our key strategies is to promote innovation. And in order to promote innovation, you have to have diversity of thought, okay? Versus everybody coming up with the same idea constantly. Think about what the first tool was. Most people will say it was a wheel. Actually, it was a rock. The first innovation was the wheel because the rock rolled, okay? So what we've discovered with Parkside students is what's brimming in those underrepresented communities. High empathy, okay? You need high empathy to have an innovative workforce and an innovative culture. You're looking at risk takers, okay? You're talking about a lot of children who grow up in a risky area, okay? And somehow they found their way, they navigated all of that to find their way to Parkside, okay? The ability to be mindful and to focus on one thing. We're talking about children that came from challenging situations, but have somehow figured it out to the point where they're actually graduating from here at Parkside. And those are the types of people that we want at Snap-on, okay? So it's literally, Parkside is servicing the type of individuals that can transform a culture. And so, lastly, I just want to say, everybody talks about diversity. And diversity sounds like a good word and everything, but if it doesn't make, if it's not about the dollars, it doesn't make sense. We've linked it to our business case. We've linked it to our innovation processes. And that's why we're starting to collect some more energy. So that's why we look at Parkside as a strategic partner of ours going forward.
Thank you. Last question. I'm looking for some advice from each one of you. As many of you know, the UW system right now is in the midst of unprecedented restructuring launched last year to address some demographic challenges, including a decline in system enrollment. Just this week, the university system announced a $25 million capacity building initiative to expand access to high demand fields, increase internship opportunities, enhance undergraduate research, and more. So in 2 sentences about, I would love your input as business leaders, as community leaders, as leaders in your fields, for best practices or ideas that could be implemented or considered by the UW system to help other universities and communities across Wisconsin evaluate and build amazing partnerships like the partnerships you have today. What advice do you have? Jeff, I know you're writing feverishly, so I'll start with you.
In our work, we try to focus on the result rather than the institution or the program. And so I would say start with the thought process of what is the result we're trying to achieve. In our case, it's recreating economic mobility and creating that fully capable and employed Racine County workforce. What is the university ultimately focusing on as the result? All the work I've talked about is really an embrace of the Wisconsin idea. How can we advance that and meet the unmet needs in our state for people who've been left behind, but also for our employers? We have terrific employers sitting here at this table, and they have real workforce needs, and if we can't meet their workforce needs, they're going to be forced to look elsewhere for their production. People aren't going to stop buying Case tractors or Snap-on tools or SC Johnson products if we can't meet their needs. So those are a couple of huge needs that I would say focus on building capacity to bring more people into the workforce to, for our employers and helping our employers to compete globally.
Start with the results. Tatiana, quickly.
I would say we have to have that collective vision. And so we always say it's the 3 shared goals, that our students are entering school ready to learn, that they're succeeding in school, and that they're succeeding in a career. And, you know, we believe our product is alignment, so bringing all together all the sectors. So if it's our business partners, K-12 partners, our partners here in higher ed at UW-Parkside, but we need to have that laser focus to support our students and really get at the disparities and inequities that are in this community.
Professor Medin, what advice do you have to build and strengthen partnerships at the UW system level?
Yeah, so I think we need to increase undergraduate research, which is one of your tenets. I think we could increase the bandwidth of students, for example, that are able to go to other universities. You know, we live diversity. I have people in my lab from Tanzania, from the Czech Republic, from Italy, from Kenya, from a variety of places. Taking students from an environment like this and putting them into that and throwing them in, and I think you met one of my summer students earlier, and to see the transition, and I'm so proud of these students, every year when the light comes on, and Dr. Medina, who's usually crabby, says, hey, I think she got it. It's amazing. So those are the kind of opportunities that we need to increase.
Michael.
Recognize that the university system as a whole, they're thought leaders. And the fact that corporate America, Snap-on, SC Johnson is in need of thought leadership and your partners and your channels, okay? And I go back to Snap-on. We didn't know what we had underneath our feet, okay? And once we were exposed to what's going on here at Parkside, we were able to collect that energy and disseminate it throughout the organization to make an impact on our bottom line. So your thought leaders present it.
Brian.
Maybe just in a practical perspective, I would say engage the leadership of the businesses that you want to on an individual basis. Come to them with solutions. Ask for their leadership involvement on boards and classes or wherever. And that will create the relationship that will allow us to recruit your talent, and also the money of scholarships and that will follow after that. So that would kind of be my suggestion.
Great. And Kelly?
The dynamism of the changes that are happening here in the southeastern part of Wisconsin is a perfect way to look at the challenges that everybody will look at, you will look at, because it is a constant change. And to stay ahead of the change is the game. And the only way to do that is to be so networked into the community, into businesses, and have that constant communication going back and forth.
Great. Panelists, thank you so much for your insights and those actionable ideas. Really appreciate your time. Regents, thank you.
So again, thank you to our panelists for sharing your insights. Kimberly, thank you for moderating. And as I think about some of the things that you said, UW-Parkside is powered by partnerships. It has been for 50 years and it will be for the next 50. Our region was our university was founded by the community for the community. And so I really appreciate you taking time to share your thoughts. And I just want to make sure that folks understand that every time they may have said my name, it's really the team here at the University of Wisconsin-Parkside that makes this all possible. So a big round of applause for our panelists and for the team at UW-Parkside. So I have a few closing remarks. So certainly we know that the partnerships that we form and nurture today are the partnerships that allow our graduates to be prepared for the future. We are all aware that the career opportunities available today are not the full extent of career opportunities that will be available in the future. What's important is that students have the talent and ability to think critically, analyze data, develop solutions, and implement change. That is the key to being successful and valued in the future. Much like Irvin Wiley, Bernard Talent, George Molinaro, Kenneth Greenquist, and members of the community who more than half a century ago were planning for the building and opening of UW-Parkside, today we are building on their legacy of success. What we do today, the decisions we make in the months to come, will shape opportunities for students who are just now beginning their educational journey. At UW-Parkside, our vision remains to transform lives. Our bold goal is to increase the annual number of graduates by 50% by 2025. How will we achieve this goal? As we begin the next 50 years of UW-Parkside and build upon a legacy of success, we commit to providing a transformative education for all of our students, to continuously improving student success, to being an authentic partner with our region, and to striving to be a best place to work in southeastern Wisconsin. So Regents, how might you help us to achieve or even exceed this bold goal? First and foremost, continue to champion and advocate for UW-Parkside and all of the campuses in the prestigious University of Wisconsin system. As we discussed at our last meeting, Dean Van Galen and I committed to working with Regent Baling and Regent Peterson to put forth op-eds about the value of the University of Wisconsin and the value of University of Wisconsin education. We have those in draft form and they will be submitted very soon. I invite you to join us as we celebrate all of our shared commitment to academic excellence and student success through our graduates. Second, I invite you to support our efforts, and I speak for all of the chancellors here, to bring our compensation levels more in line with our peers across higher education. Our business and industry partners rely on us to educate and prepare the next generation of talent for their highly competitive knowledge force, and that's what we heard from our panel members today. In most of my discussions with business and industry partners, they are increasing wages and offering new ways to retain their talent. Maybe it's the Amazon effect or the Foxconn effect. We, within the University of Wisconsin, are not insulated in this war for talent to recruit and retain quality faculty and staff. Bottom line, I believe we all share the goal to be among the top places to work, learn, and grow in Wisconsin. And we hope you will continue to support this effort for us. And I know that is very important to each of you as well. So Kelly, it's appropriate that you talked about our charter school, so I am too. So the other day I was actually touring our charter school, 21st Century Prep, that was founded with S.C. Johnson, with President Cross. The bulletin board in front of the third grade classroom profiled the logos of colleges and universities in Wisconsin and the Midwest and celebrated, as you note, the class of 2032. Okay, let that sink in for just a minute. The class of 2032, yes, the college graduates of 2032 just started third grade. Remember when you started third grade? Thanks to this third grade teacher for inspiring her students to set their sights on earning university degrees. Ladies and gentlemen, our work today in the present must be future focused because we are setting the stage for the class of 2022, 2032, 2042, and beyond. It is our responsibility to make certain those students have the opportunity for success by providing affordable access to quality higher education. I know at UW-Parkside we will continue to do our part to prepare our graduates for the opportunities and complexities ahead in the epicenter of this mega region. Thank you, and again, thank you for being partners as we celebrate our 50th year, but more importantly, partners as we begin the next 50 years at UW-Parkside. And again, thank you to our panelists.
Thank you, Chancellor Ford. As always, very, very well done. Now we'll turn to our next item on the agenda, number 4. We'll ask to have an overview of UW-Madison's Athletics Safety Report. UW-Madison Athletics Director Barry Alvarez called for a review of operations following several high-profile incidents in recent years at other institutions in the Big Ten. Coach Alvarez and several members of his team are here to present the report, but first, a few words from Chancellor Blank. Chancellor Blank, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Come on up, everyone. Have a seat. I just want to say a few words of introduction. As noted last February, Athletic Director Barry Alvarez presented the Division I report for UW Athletics. And at that report, noted that he had requested a review of our safety issues. That was in response to the very concerning events that had happened at Michigan State and became apparent a year ago in the fall. Since then, there have been only a number of other concerning events at other schools that I think have indicated the importance of asking the questions that this report asks. I want to emphasize the report was not in response to a specific complaint or pre-identified problem. As far as we know, it is the only such report that has been done among schools in the Big Ten. The report itself confirms we're doing a lot of things right, and I want to thank Barry and his whole team for their professionalism and their work with our student athletes every day. But it also indicates a number of things we can do better, and as the report indicates, we're already trying to make progress on as many of those as possible. I am very well aware that the risks that we face are not one time, and this type of report, while it tells us something about where we are now, simply indicates we have to keep our eyes on these issues into the future. So with that, let me turn things over. I want to introduce everyone who's here. You all know the Athletic Director, Barry Alvarez. Chris McIntosh is the Deputy Athletic Director and was himself a Badger athlete when he was a student on campus. An All-American. I should get all of the titles right here. Pete Miller is a really good faculty member in the School of Education, but he's also heading the athletic board of students, faculty, staff, and community members who oversee the athletic program and keep eyes on things. And then Ray Tafora, who is our Vice Chancellor for Legal Affairs and our General Counsel, is here largely because the sexual assault issues do not sit inside athletics. They do not run that piece. We run that out of the Central University and specifically out of Ray's office. So he's here to respond to any issues that might arise in that realm. Barry, it's yours.
Thank you, Chancellor. To begin with, there are a number of people whose participation in support of our safety review was critical to its success. In particular, I'd like to thank Walter Dickey for leading the review process, Pete Miller and our athletic board, Chancellor Blank, and the Board of Regents, especially Regina Milner, who was an active participant in the review. I'm thankful to have heard what I did about the many positive things happening in our department. We have policies and procedures in place that our staff members take seriously and are following. I'm equally thankful to find out that we have the opportunity to refine and improve those policies even more, and we're going to do that. Nothing is more important to me than the safety and well-being of our student athletes and our staff. It was important to our safety review to include people who don't work day-to-day in the athletic department. The perspective of independent observation was important. Many of our peers have found themselves having to react to something serious that has occurred. I'm hopefully that we can implement recommendations in the review. We will be able to avoid some of the problems we have seen elsewhere. We're trying to do everything we can to prevent any harm from coming to our student athletes, our staff, and the reputation of our great university. As I mentioned, We have a lot in place in our department that keeps us out of trouble, from compliance procedures, financial controls, to practices aimed at maintaining academic integrity, to health and safety related operations. We'll continue to do everything we can to control the things that we can control. We will hire good people, recruit the best student athletes we can, and try to put everyone in positions to be safe and to succeed. One of the points I've always made with our parents recruits, is that we're going to be committed to the safety and care of their sons or daughters. A lot has changed in college athletics and in the world in general since I was a student athlete at Nebraska. But I tell our staff and student athletes all the time that we have to embrace change. Yes, we have challenges in college athletics, but we have an opportunity here with the recommendations of our safety review to face some of those challenges head on. The best teams and organizations that I've been a part of are never satisfied and always want to improve. That's where UW Athletics is. We are committed to improvement in the areas touched upon in the safety review. I again want to thank the people inside and outside of our department who spent thousands of hours compiling this review. It's going to make us better. Now at this time I'd like to introduce Chris McIntosh to cover the main theme of the report.
Thank you, Barry. As you know, Director Alvarez initiated the safety review the first week of February after learning about the events at Michigan State. The review was initiated in a proactive manner, absent of allegation or even suspicion, but rather with an eye towards assessing our current policy and practice. It's our understanding, as Chancellor Blank mentioned, that this is the first of its kind in the Big Ten. It's worth noting that this report is limited to the University of Wisconsin-Madison's athletic department and is diagnostic in nature. It's representative of a single point in time. One of the questions that we wanted to answer is, how are our current policy and practice working? The review was also intended to identify areas in which we can get better. The second question, how can we get better? Interviews were conducted with current student athletes and staff and a subset of thousands of the student athletes and coaches and staff that fall under the watchful eye of this board. It was important for the department to feel as though everyone, all of our student athletes and all of our staff, had the opportunity to participate and share their thoughts. We feel confident that they were able to do so. For some additional context on the approach taken and the methodology behind developing the report before you, I'll ask Dr. Pete Miller to share a few thoughts.
Thanks, Chris. Just wanted to provide a little context on what we did and how we did it and why we did it that way. You've been able to take a look at the report, and the methods are kind of laid out there. I just wanted to point out a few aspects of that method that I found as especially important. One is that the importance of this group of advisors that guided this process along. So one of the initial decisions that was made with this process was to say that this needed to be really authentically informed by those who are kind of at different spots, not just those within the athletic department. So that this group of advisors, including Regent Milner, included the law enforcement, people in mental health and in the medical area, in administrative areas. So we had a really, you can read who that group was, a really good group of advisors that helped us lead this report throughout the process. Another aspect of the method I just wanted to share was that, you know, Chris and Director Alvarez mentioned that a lot of this was done in response to what we saw at some of our other peer institutions. We also recognized as a group, and our advisors helped us think about this, was that we didn't want to be purely reactive. We wanted to take a little bit of a broader approach, and with their expertise, learn about what should we be looking at, not just what the latest crisis was, but what else is in the purview of what we might think about. So that's how we kind of arrived at the kind of main themes the areas to talk about with participants. I wanted to kind of also just reiterate the nature of this. One balancing point we had throughout this was balancing comprehensiveness and urgency. We realized that the breadth of this was one that we could take years undertaking. We realized that, you know, in our conversations with the Big Ten commissioner, for example, with Jim Delaney, he mentioned to us that just in the Big Ten conference, there are more student athletes in that conference, more than double the number of student athletes in the Big Ten conference than there are total professional athletes in the United States. So it's a large enterprise at a conference level and at the university level. So we recognized that we wanted to be comprehensive as possible, but within a succinct period of time. So what we did was we used some surveys that we put together with the help of our expertise on campus. We sent out to all student athletes, to all staff. We heard from over 500 people on the key areas, the surveys in the back of the document you have. We had a staff of people who interviewed over 150 individuals, took part in interviews. We had a selection of students from every team on the campus, from every unit of the athletic department. So just wanted to reiterate that there literally were thousands of hours invested in this, which I would say was an important undertaking in a worthwhile way. The last thing I'll say about the method was that our process when sitting down with those interviews was to ask each of these individuals about kind of a day in the life or a week in the life of their work or of their competition, of their study. What does it look like? What does a week look like for you? With recognition that we didn't want to just come in and say, what's wrong? What are all the problems? We wanted to kind of learn about the regular routines. As an outsider myself, I learned quite a bit, and I would speak for the rest of our team that we did learn quite a bit. We'll share some of that here today.
Thank you, Pete. The first theme that we'll cover today is that of safe environments. From an operational standpoint, at times the department can be geographically far-flung. Multiple teams competing or practicing many times simultaneously across the country. Even at the slow times, of which there seems to be few, our facilities are spread across the Madison campus, and the majority of those facilities are shared facilities, shared with the public or shared with recreational sports. Sadly, when we observe the tragedies like the one that took place by our colleagues at Iowa State just a few weeks ago, it reminds us of a world in which we live, and reminds us of the world in which we live, and causes us to commit to do everything we can to ensure the safety of our staff and our student athletes. The most common concerns we heard from our student athletes and staff were related to the preservation of safe environments. Facility safety at home and on the road, security, access, all issues that when looked at through the lens of a day in the life of a student athlete bring about clarity of the concern. The department acknowledges these concerns and has already begun to make the necessary adjustments. For those recommendations that require further study, we've engaged experts in those fields. By way of example, our partners at the University Police Department have agreed to assist in the further development and implementation of a facility safety plan. For additional context, Pete.
So again, as someone who's kind of coming from outside of the athletic department, one of the kind of key initial things I think a lot of us on this group quickly came away with is the scope of this. You know, we're not talking about just kind of with facilities, just Camp Randall Stadium or the Kohl Center. We're talking about, we quickly learned 13 different facilities and environments on campus, all of which are very different. You know, some of them are indoor, some are outdoor, some have a constant flow of people coming in and out. All of them have their specific kind of safety concerns relative to each of these facilities. We also kind of learned that safe environments isn't limited to on campus. We have a little document here, an example of one weekend of activity, a weekend coming up in November here, where we'll have 13 different teams in action. The university will have 13 teams in action, half of them traveling 4,500 miles round trip. 300 combined staff and student athletes traveling that one weekend. That one weekend, the University of Wisconsin-Madison will be hosting as many as 8 events. as many as 35,000 spectators, and this is a non-football home weekend. So this, when we kind of just looked at one weekend, kind of hammers home that this is a broad enterprise. It's one in Madison. It's one from coast to coast on any given weekend. So that, in one way, is a little bit daunting to think about the scale of this. And we also learned this not just during kind of the academic year. In the summertime, there are 12,000 campers coming to camp, basketball camp and soccer camp and every other kind of camp, 900 counselors and staff every summer. So it's a large contingent of people in a broad variety of places when we're talking about facilities. We learned that this process itself of going to every unit and going to every team and asking them about their environments was itself a useful exercise, that a lot of solutions have already come up. A lot of kind of fixes have already started to happen just by asking and learning about each of these settings. There's especially with the consultation of Kristen Roman, Chief Roman, our campus security or police chief. We had some really good insights about, you know, when we start talking about facilities, there's a balance between, on one hand, locking everything down and making it like Fort Knox to get in and out of, which we recognize is not what we're aiming for, versus, on the other hand, looking at other strategies about creating safe environments in these diverse places while still being a hospitable environment, but still being a place where people want to come and spend time with their families and their friends. So that's been, in some of the solutions that are in the document that you've read about, that's been a constant kind of dilemma, or I shouldn't say dilemma, but consideration about how do we continue to create a hospitable, welcoming environment while also maintaining a safe environment. That's been greatly aided by one of our advisors, especially the Chief Roman.
Thanks, Pete. The second theme that we'll touch on today is student-athlete health. With an emphasis on medical treatment and mental health, we are reassured that our sports medicine team is operating in such a way that we can all be proud of. Consistent with the Big Ten standards for safeguarding institutional control, our doctors and our trainers operate free of improper influence. We're comforted to know that treatments are administered in open areas and that when privacy is required, our practice is to have more than one staff member present during those treatments. The delivery of health care to our student athletes is made far more complicated when our teams take to the road. Our staff administer treatments in both clinical settings like the ones found in the Cole Center or within Camp Randall, but also in hotels when traveling. The department acknowledges that there are considerations that deserve exploration by experts in the field of healthcare. The department is appreciative of the feedback we received. We're comforted by what we've heard, and we're committed to getting better. Pete, if you'd share a few thoughts on that.
This clearly was one of our areas we were especially interested in. You know, all of these areas, this was one that we really wanted to dig deep in. I personally spoke with and interviewed every one of we have 12 team physicians that the university has there that work with athletics. So I sat down with each of them, and I wanted to learn about their routines with their work and where it happens, how it happens, what concerns do they have, what are the best practices in their field. One of the doctors was not accessible, so I should say I spoke with 11, and with the 12th I had an email exchange. One of the areas that really was at the center of those conversations was the communication loop that occurs between care providers for student athletes on campus. In that, if you look at the specialization of the physicians that work with the teams, it's broad and it's impressive. So very rarely would we think that students are without the care that they need. Where the concern especially comes in is who is communicating and how is that communication happening around that care. And I'll give a couple of examples. On most teams, in fact, just about on every team, we learned that kind of the central hub of care for most students is the athletic trainer that works with that team. These are people who are with the team day in and day out. The athletic trainers work closely with the physicians in creating the care of the students, in managing the care. But the other key people, obviously, in that loop that need to be central and considered there's the athletic trainer, there's the doctor, there's the coach, and of course, at the very center, there's the student athlete. And how do we make sure that the information is handled appropriately in those loops? So some of those findings are discussed in the report. And one of the key kind of recommendations that this group made was that there always be at least 2 medical service care providers present when care is delivered. That's a norm that already exists in the department. So all of the physicians, everyone that I interviewed, said that that is the norm, that there always are these multiple people in the space when care is provided. The other is, though, that when teams are on the road, there's different facilities. So sometimes there are different dynamics at play when a team is, say, staying at a hotel or when they are, in a different university's facility. So that's an area that we ask for continued examination of and assembly of a group that will determine best practices off campus, not just on campus. We did not hear of any instances of undue influence from coaches pressuring students to compete when they're not healthy. So that was an issue that we've heard about in other situations. We did not have any students that we spoke with or asked about describing that. Another, I'll say, a last kind of key area that we talked about, it's related to the first two, is that we found an increased interest and need of student athletes to address mental health needs. And the university has provided increased access to mental health services, both within the athletic department and the broader university. But those situations are kind of, they present especially interesting conversations about who knows what, in that, a lot of the coaches we spoke with said, I want to know what's going on with those who are the students on my team. I want to be able to help them. But at the same time, we know there are HIPAA laws that preclude them from always knowing what's going on. So we didn't hear of any cases where information was inappropriately being shared about mental health, but we did hear about people wanting to know how can we do this best. So that's one of our recommendations as well, was to have the teams and coaches, trainers, and the service providers continue learning about how they can deliver services but communicate about them in the best possible way.
The last section of the report, communication of expectations and reporting of wrongdoing. It's clear that the athletic department benefits from a culture of compliance. The benefits are felt by student athletes and the community as a whole. The review did confirm that our staff and our student athletes feel as though they can share any concerns that they have. The department is confident that our responsible employees are well trained and are fulfilling their reporting obligations. However, we do acknowledge the opportunity to enhance our training efforts, and we embrace the recommendations of the review, understanding the importance of consistently educating our staff and our student athletes on the reporting resources that are available, both within and outside of the athletic department. Currently, our student athletes are likely to share concerns with coaches and trainers, those that they spend the most time with. Those staff members have proven to have been reliable in reporting those concerns to the appropriate resource, many times outside of the department. Opportunity does, though, exist to enhance those lines by educating our staff. On the topic of sexual assault training and prevention, as well as Title IX compliance, we will continue to partner with the university's Office of Compliance and work hand in hand with Title IX Coordinator Lauren Hasselbecker. Currently, student athletes participate in mandatory training modules that cover topics like healthy relationships, consent, sexual violence, and harassment, just to name a few. While these trainings exceed those experienced by students in the general student body, it's clear that it would be impossible for us to overinvest in the proactive education and training of our student athletes. In the future, areas of emphasis will include that of underclassmen, those that haven't experienced the training with the same frequency and repetition of their older teammates. We acknowledge that there is room to do more and have already committed additional resources to doing so. We'll continue to invest in the efforts and proactively educate our student athletes and train our staff. Vice Chancellor Tafora.
Thank you, Mac. Good afternoon. Let me talk broadly about sexual misconduct, the training, the reporting of sexual misconduct, and the university's obligations under Title IX. Title IX, as all of you probably know all too well, is a federal law that requires non-discrimination on the basis of sex. Title IX has been employed in a variety of different methods by the federal government to ensure that certain training occurs, certain policies are implemented by universities, and there's a complaint resolution mechanism. At UW-Madison, what we do, and understand that student athletes are treated as all other athletes for purposes of both, for purposes of complaint and complaint investigation at the university. But the Title IX program was stood up as part of the larger Office of Compliance shortly after both Chancellor Blank and I arrived at the University of Wisconsin at Madison in 2013. What the office does, it's headed by a Title IX coordinator, currently Lauren Hasselbacher. We have to have that coordinator by virtue of federal law. She is assisted by 3 other investigators who investigate all instances of not only sexual discrimination and misconduct, but all discrimination. In addition, there are a variety of different deputy Title IX coordinators who assist in the implementation of the Title IX program. One such Title IX coordinator rests in the Division of Athletics. On training, there's an extensive amount of training that occurs both by virtue of your requirements. Remember, we had a program just completed this past summer on mandatory sexual assault, sexual misconduct training for employees that was required of all of our campuses, and we concluded that earlier this summer. As Mac had mentioned, there's also extensive requirements for annual training of student athletes and staff by the NCAA, which we of course adhere to. We partner with not only our staffs, but also the University Health Services on additional trainings, and the Title IX coordinator will do specialized training for any division, department, college at the university that seeks it, okay? On the subject of complaints and the resolution of complaints, all athletes, including student athletes, are subject, as I mentioned, to that process. It usually occurs by a complaint, a formal complaint being received in the Title IX office, okay? Those who report such sexual misconduct include what are known as responsible employees, which has been touched on earlier. Responsible employees include most of officialdom that have contact with students. In the instance of the Division of Athletics, this would be the director, the associate directors, the coaches, the assistants, training staff, and student support staff. But responsible employees, if they receive information about sexual assault, are required to report into the Title IX office. Title IX office, if it receives a formal complaint, will go ahead and investigate that complaint. The complaint is then, a report is then written, the report is then delivered to the student conduct office. So no complaint resolution or investigation occurs at athletics for student athletes. It's all in the Title IX office, in the Office of Compliance. The Office of Compliance, however, writes only the report. Its resolution then is handled by the Division of Student Life. That is the person responsible, the person alleged responsible for sexual misconduct? If so, what penalty is appropriate? Then, of course, appeals under your codes to the chancellor and discretionary review by you in most instances. So that's the totality of our Title IX, both training and complaint resolution process. I would add only that in addition to what I mentioned about your requirement of mandatory employee sexual assault training, there's also a program we're undertaking now out of the compliance office to specially train on an annual basis these responsible employees so that the persons to whom complaints are to be directed understand what their responsibilities are, understand how to handle the information, and most importantly, understand how to get the information to the Title IX office. Thanks.
Okay, in closing, one of the most important decisions a parent and their children make in their life is where to attend college. My daughter, Dawn Ferguson, entrusted her 2 sons, Joe and Jake, to the care of UW Athletics. When I was asked, I told them there is no place I'd rather have my grandsons attend school and play football than the University of Wisconsin-Madison. We're very proud of it. That's our report, and we'll be pleased to answer any questions for you.
Thank you, Director Alvarez and members of the team. Before we do questions, I thought I would just make a comment. As a board, as regents, our athletic teams are immensely successful. We're probably spoiled. Our teams win. They win a lot. But equally critical and important about today is that They're having great success on the field, while at the same time having safety. This report addresses safety at all angles. I think it was very well timed and very well done. So certainly for me as the chair of the board, thank you, Director Alvarez and members of your staff. This was really good work. I know I do have some members of the board that do have questions. Regina Milner, would you like to go first?
Actually, mine is more of a form of a comment, and what I'd like to say to my fellow regents is, first of all, just briefly a little background. The board's keen interest in the oversight of Division I athletics started really in 2012 with incidents that happened at Penn State. At that time, we had really substantive discussions about it, and we had a lot of information that we learned, particularly about the University of Wisconsin-Madison and what they had already in place. What I'd like to share with you is they talked about all parts of the athletic department: compliance, student welfare, safety, etc. What I would say is at the University of Wisconsin, and really we are unique within the Big Ten, and we're unique within the system of athletics, we have an athletic board comprised of faculty, academic staff, and community members. Now, although that does not have governance authority as far as financial and hiring and firing, it does have direct involvement in subcommittees that deal with student safety, that deal with compliance, that deal with student welfare, and that is substantive. Each one of those athletic board members are assigned to a particular athletic department, and they interact with the students, the trainers, and the coaches, so they have an intimate knowledge of it. That is unique. We are unique in Wisconsin for that reason. So that's a little bit of the background. Now, just a few words about my participation. Clearly, the issues at Michigan State prompted this inquiry, but it was not because of any particular issue that concerned us at UW-Madison, but rather a general concern about the whole issue of safety. Now, what I'd like to share with you is that I was particularly impressed with that, because so often a single incident, what do they say, a bad case makes bad law? A single incident, if you only focus in on that particular incident, in other words, the kinds of things that happened at Penn State or the kinds of things that happened at Michigan State, you are not going to come out with the kind of analysis that was done by this group of individuals. So I was particularly impressed with the scope as it was outlined to me. Now, what I would also like to say is that I was part of the advisory committee, and I have to say we were brought in and at every stage of the work. And I will say that our advice from the various members of that group was not only taken under advisement, but was applied. I'm going to give you two examples. And this is, the first example is a sampling system. They laid out the planned sampling system, and there were a few of us that challenged that. And that sampling system was changed. It was totally revamped from what they had planned. And you can see in the report what they did, the comprehensiveness of their sampling system, because two of the concerns about sampling was a volunteer sampling either picks out the worst or the best. That's not a good sampling system. The other thing is random sampling doesn't always capture diversity within the athletic group. So what they did is they did both random sampling and then also did a random sampling of the samples that were left out. I mean, that sounds like overkill, but it really was important. The other thing that they did was not to focus in on a particular question, but rather, as Professor Miller suggested, what they did is a day in the life, which gave them all kinds of information. So I was particularly impressed by that. We had an opportunity to weigh in, and they were persons not connected with the athletic department. And what I would say is that we are very fortunate to do this, because the one thing that I discovered early on, which I didn't realize, is the breadth of safety issues at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. And that is probably true at all of our Division I athletic department, at all of our Division I schools. I had forgotten the issues related to travel. But I do remember from my time on the athletic board what we observed in terms of, for example, women's baseball or women's softball. The issues of traveling in the winter, the issues of that they had to travel and what they did and what happened in the hotels, and their issues about studying. So I want to compliment them, and I want to thank you for providing this opportunity for them to make the report. And I just have one other comment. This spring, I had an opportunity to do the AGB conference in San Francisco. At the AGB conference in San Francisco, they had 4 representatives from different schools in different athletic divisions. And after it was all over, I went to the director of AGB, the president of AGB, and I said, "What is going on? That is not what we see at Wisconsin." And his reply was, "Yes, I know, and you are the template." So, thank you very much.
Thank you, Regent Milner. Regents, other questions? Regent Ring.
I just want to first, Coach, thank you, and thank you, Chancellor Blank and your team for providing this report. I think it's much like what Regent Milner said. It's fantastic and very impressive. I think the challenges to mitigating risks to hundreds of student athletes is significant, as outlined obviously in the report and your review. And I believe layers of control and compliance initiatives are critical to ensure we are vigilant in protecting each and every student athlete. So going off of that, one question I had was, how is UW-Madison unique in how it currently addresses safety for student athletes?
Thank you for that question. As you know, the University of Wisconsin-Madison is a shared governance system. And I think one of the aspects that makes our operation unique is, has been touched on, particularly by Regent Milner. That is the intimate involvement that folks from within and outside the department participate in. Actually, Dr. Miller has studied the involvement of boards, athletic boards at our peer institutions. Some of those boards meet twice a year, quarterly. Some within the athletic department might admit that we might meet too frequently, but I can tell you this, our meetings take place, there's north of 35 meetings that take place annually. We have 4 subcommittees with people that are assigned to each of our teams and each of the units within our department. So we have what I think are sound checks and balances and sound transparency from those outside of the department.
Let me just add one other thing. I think one approach that we've always taken in our athletic department is to be proactive instead of reactive and anticipate things that may happen. As I address the entire staff, all employees and our athletes, you know, as far as, let's say, compliance as an example. We talk about, you know, if you see something that doesn't look quite right, report it. Let us decipher whether this is right or wrong. Don't stick your head in the sand. Don't ignore things. So we try to be proactive in everything we do, and I think we've done a pretty good job of that. And I think this report exemplifies that.
Thank you. Other questions? Regent Vice President Peterson.
Thank you, Regent President Bailing. Back in August, we had a healthy discussion in anticipation of this report as we heard about Madison's Division I athletic report. And above and beyond the 150 interviews that took place related to this particular safety report, this team, the athletic department, also discussed privately with many of you concerns that you wanted to bring forward to make sure we're included in this report were considered as part of these discussions. And so for that, I certainly want to say thank you. Our relationship with the athletic board, in my mind, has never been better, and that goes for the athletic department. So Director Alvarez, Deputy Director McIntosh, and Ray and team, thank you for that. For those in the audience that haven't read this report, I would highly encourage you to do that. The scope of this report is wide and it's complex. You should read this report. It's extremely extensive. As I read the beginning of the report, I happen to have a daughter who's on a recruiting visit today. Her mother is armed with a number of questions. I pity the coach and assistant athletic director that will answer things like, is this a secure environment? Safety to athletes, late night and early use of athletic facilities, namely pools, lighting concerns, etc. The point I raise, and I do that in jest, is only to say the scope of what our athletic department has to think about is incredibly extensive. This report demonstrates that great thought has gone into that. A couple of other thoughts. This report is proactive, it's comprehensive, it's transparent. It's by no means perfect, but it's instructive and it's very best practice focused on athletic well-being, facilities management, concussion protocols, mental health support, sexual awareness education, and training. And it's clear in this report that more training needs to be done. Finally, this report has recommendations on what our department still needs to do. And from the conversations I've privately had, I'm quite confident that those will all be followed up. For that, I'm very grateful that you proactively took these steps, and I thank you for the report today.
Thank you, Regent Peterson. Other questions? Regent Mueller.
Thank you, Mr. President. And let me add my voice to the chorus of compliments. It's a very well done report, very thorough. As my colleague Regent Milner mentioned, this will be, I'm sure, a national template, and you should be very proud of all the work that went into it. But I do have to say that I felt that the weakest section of the report was toward the end on sexual assault training and prevention. Student athletes are admired, they're looked up to, respected on campuses. And there are a couple of sentences in here that were very troubling to me. You write, for example, that athletes are confused about what constitutes sexual violence. And they're navigating newfound freedoms on a college campus. Now, I hope that's just an editing error, but there should be no confusion about sexual violence. No means no. And sexual intercourse involves two sentient beings. If alcohol or drugs is affecting one, that's sexual violence. So also with regard to the next steps, you encourage your student athletes to work with the University Health Service, and I, of course, certainly commend that. But just know that of the many excellent pages here, I really was troubled by the confusion over sexual violence. We've spent a lot of money and a lot of attention to say no means no. And I hope you'll take that into consideration as you move forward with your training.
Thank you, Regent Mueller. Regents, other questions? Regent Klein.
Just a quick thank you. I thought it was very well done, and appreciate you taking the time to put a comprehensive report in place. I think all the campuses probably should follow your lead. Thank you to Regent Milner for her eyes on it, because I know she was a member of the athletic board, and I'm sure that was very, very helpful to have her comments and her careful attention to that. I also wanted to just say to Dr. Miller, thank you for talking to all those doctors. I mean, that really makes me feel good that you took the time, because I mean, obviously, as Regina said, you're not going to necessarily have the same problems arise in one campus that arose at a different university, but it makes me feel really good that you did that, and I assume in that role you're kind of acting as a volunteer, and so I just want to say thank you. That must have taken a countless number of hours, so thanks.
Thank you, Regent Klein. Regent Whitburn.
I studied the report
The subject matter is of massive concern, I think, to all of us. I did pay particular attention to Walter Dickey's signature on the report. Longtime, highly professional administrator, known over an extended period of time is a highly competent, no-nonsense lawyer. I think what we have, and we're fortunate to have, is grown-ups involved who fully understand the stakes. I'm also confident that you understand the need for the follow-up. Look at gaps, phase 2 around the police. But I, too, was very impressed with this report.
Thank you, Regent Whitburn. Madam Clerk has reminded me we're about 10 minutes over schedule, but this is a very important topic. Before we excuse our athletic director and staff, any other questions, Regents? If not, let's give Coach Alvarez and his staff a round of applause. We'll go to item number 5 on the agenda. At our last meeting, we presented, discussed, and passed the UW Systems biennial budget request for 2019-21, which has since been forwarded to the Governor's Office for consideration. One key part of our budget request focused on capacity building initiatives, and today we'll hear details from several chancellors. To start us off and lead us in this discussion, President Cross, take it from here.
Thank you, Regent President Bailing. As you will recall, we refer to this package, this set of proposals in our budget request as capacity building initiatives. They're designed to increase student success and output with an emphasis on addressing the state's workforce needs. In many cases, these build on what we're already good at, such as healthcare, engineering, science, and technology. We do a pretty good job of educating nurses, but the state needs a lot more than we can currently produce. We're often constrained from accepting more students by not enough faculty, not enough support staff, and sometimes facilities. In terms of funding, these initiatives represent just a fraction of our budget request. That is $25 million in base in the second year. But in terms of impact, I believe they'll have tremendous results. As part of this effort, we ask our campus leaders this question: if we could secure $25 million in base, what would you do to increase capacity in your areas of expertise to better meet the state's most pressing needs? What we received in response are the Chancellor's recommendations. You'll hear about some of those here in a moment. Our chancellors have bold ideas, and over the next several board meetings, the next 3, this one included, they will be sharing an overview of their proposals and representing several distinct geographic areas of the state and one of our R1 institutions. Today we'll hear from Chancellor Leavitt, Chancellor Meyer, Chancellor Money, and Chancellor Ford. Please come to the stage if you would, please. I do want to remind our chancellors that 4 o'clock is when the game begins, and
who'd like to go first this afternoon? Chancellor, take it away.
All right. Well, good afternoon, and thank you for the opportunity to do this today. I will focus on 2 of UW-Oshkosh's 4 capacity building initiatives. These include efforts to create more engineering-related graduates and to produce more K-12 teachers in high-demand areas for the region and state. First, a new and powerful programmatic tandem in engineering-related disciplines. As yet another benefit of UW-Oshkosh joining with UW-Fox Valley and UW-Fond du Lac, we now have a new partner in UW-Platteville to provide much-needed engineering-related talent to the Fox Valley and Northeast Wisconsin. Our UW Fox Valley campus has been home to the successful collaborative UW Platteville engineering program for over 10 years. We now have an opportunity to integrate that successful program in partnership with our existing highly responsive UW-Oshkosh Engineering Technology program. Engineering technology in our region is the product of the Northeast Wisconsin Educational Resource Alliance, or New Era, collaboration. The Oshkosh campus currently counts more than 150 students as engineering technology majors. We have hit or surpassed our targets for this program. So, our capacity building goal is to increase the number of engineering-related graduates via academic collaboration and leveraging existing resources. There are 3 elements to this goal. Element 1, the engineering technology program will expand the number of engineering technologists through creating more awareness at the high school level. If you build it, they will come is not a strategy that works with today's students. Intentional engagement of high school students to create awareness and interest in engineering-related disciplines is required. Element 2, UW-Oshkosh and UW-Platteville have signed an MOU to create a new engineering relationship called the Integrated Engineering Collaboration. I thank Chancellor Dennis Shields for this opportunity. And since Dennis isn't here today, I'm going to add a number of other addendums to our collaboration that he will pay for, of course. This collaboration will both allow, it will allow both institutions to further grow what I call a culture of engineering-related disciplines, thus providing greater support for engineering and engineering technology students in the Fox Valley. We will share faculty and facilities at the UW Fox Valley campus and graduate more engineering-related talent for Eastern Wisconsin. And element 3, UW-Oshkosh Department of Engineering Technology will reach out to expand articulation agreements to Southeast Wisconsin to begin to meet the needs of Foxconn and other businesses. This potentially includes offering 4-year degrees in engineering technology with partners in a cohort format, as we have done successfully in the past. We have more than 20 existing articulation agreements with technical colleges, and will look to UW-Parkside, UW-Milwaukee, Gateway, Blackhawk, the Milwaukee area technical colleges to assess new partnerships in this region. We look forward to our conversations with these and other potential partners. So that's how we are going to address the demand for new engineering talent. And now for the second proposal, teachers. Attracting diverse students to teaching profession in high-need areas. Teacher education is firmly rooted in the DNA of our comprehensive institutions. This is our origin and perhaps our greatest contribution to the regions we serve. We and our sister institutions produce great teaching professionals that educate the children of Wisconsin. There is an urgency to attract, retain, and graduate diverse students in high-need teacher shortage areas such as special education, English as a second language, and bilingual education. We are positioned to do this. Here's how. Element 1, over the next 5 years, we will increase the percentage of diverse students enrolling and graduating in the College of Education and Human Services teachers education programs from 9% to 16%. UW-Oshkosh is poised to do this due to the increasing enrollments of students of color on the Oshkosh campus. Some of our biggest and most diverse school districts are seriously lacking in teachers who reflect the diversity of the student body. In 2016, 6 of the largest school districts in our region employed 53 teachers from diverse backgrounds out of a total of 3,029 teachers. That is under 2%. Meanwhile, the non-white student population in these same districts range from approximately 10% to 30%. If we can close that gap, we improve student engagement, performance, and success. And how will we do it? We will host a minimum of 2 pre-college programs a year to give prospective future teachers a robust introduction to the profession and a dose of inspiration on our Oshkosh campus. We will increase the percentage of diverse students passing 2 required teacher assessments that have proven to be barriers for them entering the workforce. And we plan a mentor program for students from diverse backgrounds so that there is mentor-mentee contact at least 2 times per semester with a faculty member. Element 2, we will increase access to the teaching profession by establishing new 1+3 teacher education partnerships with high schools. This element capitalizes on the success of our dual enrollment cooperative academic partnership program, or CAP. In 5 years, we plan to add 10 new 1+3 high school partnerships, starting with at least 3 in the 2018-2019 school year. In Element 3, we want to increase the capacity to provide much-needed English as a second language and ESL bilingual licensure, while also increasing our capacity to prepare students for special education endorsement. ESL and special education are critical teacher shortage areas. Let's dive into the numbers. Cross-categorical special education is the highest need licensure area in the state of Wisconsin, with over 400 teachers currently on emergency licenses. The demand is expected to continue to grow over the next 10 years. Further, thousands of English learner students spend part or all of their days with teachers who have not been adequately trained. In 2017, in the state of Wisconsin, there were 209 emergency licensed bilingual or bicultural teachers and 90 emergency licensed ESL teachers, according to the Department of Public Instruction. So, we plan to develop and implement an alternative English as a second language bilingual licensure pathway by the beginning of the 2020 school year. We will also increase the number of students graduating with this licensure by 10%. And we propose to increase special education endorsement capacity through our College of Education and Human Services Collaborative Outreach Model. This means increasing the number of Wisconsin higher ed outreach partner institutions we work with from 3 to 6 over the next 5 years. I would point you all to the proposals we have submitted to the UW system for greater detail on each of our 4 capacity building initiatives. And with the state's support, we are confident we can deliver on each of them. And I welcome any comments or questions at the end of this presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Chancellor. Chancellor Mone, would you like to go next?
I think in the slide deck, it's...
We'll hear from Chancellor Meyer.
But I would love to go. Thank you. I want to mention that I brought along my provost, Patrick Guilfoyle, to get me through the 30 slides that I need to cover right now. I'm not kidding about Patrick. I am kidding about the numbers. Don't worry, it's not that long. I just want to review how UW Stout, of course, is a polytechnic institution with a career focus, applied learning, and a focus on collaboration. And that's really, I want to mention that because it's really the nature in which we looked at the opportunities in which we wanted to expand what we're doing at the university. Some of these slides I use for other presentations, and I really only want to focus on a couple of features here. If you look at the graphic on the left-hand side for career pathways, it really summarizes the main cluster of programs that we have. On the right side, it indicates that we have 49 undergraduate programs and 24 graduate programs, and they're really shaped around that array of clusters that you see. Our expansion is based on our industry connections, the second point in this slide. Every one of those programs, including the graduate programs, has an advisory committee that provides us feedback on the programs that we have. These advisors also give us a lot of feedback on what we don't have for programs. So we're shaping our capacity building around what we're hearing from our employers that they have needs for that we're not meeting and not meeting in Western Wisconsin. The 2 areas that we're really focusing on in this would be the cluster at about 11 o'clock on this graphic science and engineering, as well as 12 o'clock information technology and communications. Of course, we're very proud of our employment rate at 98.2%. You probably heard during my inauguration that I believe in continuous improvement, moving that up. We've gone from 97% to 97.1 to 97.3, and some of you are rolling your eyes now because you've heard this from me before. I'm proud that we're at 98.2%, but to some degree a little bit alarmed because I think it really indicates that we've hit the wall in terms of saturating the market. And what we need to do is recruit more students at Stout and also retain more students to meet the needs of our employers. That's why I have this one up here. The other thing that I'd mention is that if you take that employment rate, take the students out of that employment rate that are going on for their education, look at what they're making as a salary and roll that up into a number. The last bullet on the right shows that last year's graduating class alone earned starting salaries that exceed $68 million. That's a great investment in the economy of Western Wisconsin. It's one that we want to expand on. So what happened there? It didn't advance. No, it did. Okay.
Great. So just a couple points to make on this slide. One focus is related to information technology and computer science. And part of the reason for that is the area of the state that we're in, the corridor from Hudson, Wisconsin to Eau Claire, Wisconsin in particular, has a great deal of growth. It's one of the fastest growing regions in the state. These are areas in that part of the state where there's demand for these particular fields. Over the past 4 years, UW-Stout has grown 8% in terms of the number of students who are in the fields of computer science, computer networking, and applied mathematics. We feel with this funding we could add to that number. In addition, UW-Stout recently got the designation from the National Security Agency of a Cyber Defense Education Center for Academic Excellence. We're the only institution, only four-year institution in the state that has that designation. This funding would allow us to grow the number of students that we have participate in those programs.
There we go. The talent needs of employers in the region is also very high for graduates in engineering and engineering technology programs. UW-Stout's offerings in ABET accredited engineering have grown by 45% to 749 students over the 4 years that I've served as chancellor. I'm very proud of that increase in ABET accredited graduates. Nearly 1,200 students are enrolled in degree programs at UW-Stout in engineering and engineering technology alone. This proposal will expand offerings in manufacturing engineering and computer and electrical engineering that are in high demand by employers in western Wisconsin. The proposal also supports our programs to collaborate on Industry 4.0 and the Internet of Things. You may have heard about these concepts. They allow manufacturers to include automated processes in their facilities and produce more with fewer people, and connect and secure information and control systems that are global in nature. In addition, funds will help attract and educate technical college transfers into new programming in welding engineering and industry systems engineering. That last one, industry systems engineering, we are doing in concert with Platteville.
Then the final area where we're looking at, the next to final area that we're looking at in terms of capacity building is in biochemistry, molecular biology, and industrial chemistry. This was a new major at UW-Stout in applied biochemistry and molecular biology for the fall. We have capacity for students. We have opportunities, we believe, with industry, working with industrial scale, fermentation, and other kinds of processes. So we think there's an opportunity for growth there as well. And then one other area we were looking for funding in terms of capacity building was with our Career Services Office. We've been very successful with that office right now in terms of a career fair, which is one of the largest ones in the upper Midwest. We've had over 400 employers. In fact, just this past week, we had a career fair with over 400 employers. We would like to use this funding to increase staffing, to allow us not only to offer more internships and co-op experiences, but also to increase the variety and quality of those experiences for our students. And in terms of our outcomes, we would expect to have an increase in the number of students in these areas. We also would expect to have an increase in the number of students participating in co-ops, internships, field experiences, and other experiential education, and to afford them more opportunities with a variety of employers as well. And as Chancellor Meyer mentioned, the idea of maintaining our high placement rate for students would be another goal of this funding.
Chancellor Modi.
Thank you, Regent President Baling, and Regents, we're delighted to address you today. I'm going to build on what my previous Chancellor colleagues have discussed and stress a couple of points that President Cross made. The initiatives that we're seeking support for are actually supplements and ways to leverage existing programs that we have. They're also very much needed by the state. And what we're doing across the UW system is simply not enough. And so I'm going to really stress how the investments in specific areas would be leveraged to continue that ROI that we're getting from the activities that we're engaged in. What you can see here is there's 6 initiatives that support all our capacity building priorities across the UW system. I'm not going to go into all of those. I'm going to select 4 of those to talk about in a little bit of depth and talk about the specific investment and the return that the state will get. I say this in the context of a campus that has put 30,000 graduates into the workforce in the last 5 years. Over 50% of those students are in high demand areas: engineering, nursing, IT, computer science, and many, many related areas. Most of the other students are in areas that are also well employed. We've got significant retention of our talent. 85% of our 185,000 graduates are working today in Wisconsin. So that's pretty substantial. The investments that we're seeking additional resources for would support that. So just very briefly, 2 of the areas across the top, I'm stressing 2 of the priorities for UW system: talent pipeline and then the collaboration. When I talk about collaboration, it is yes with industry and employers, but it's also with other higher ed institutions. Chancellor Ford today is going to talk about HERA, which we've talked about a number of times. This is the Higher Education Regional Alliance. But know that this type of investment is absolutely critical for building on the partnerships across higher education. Why would we not invest small amounts, relatively small amounts, to get much, much greater return? So as an example, in information technology, and we know how every single organization, whether it's healthcare, education, manufacturing, nonprofit, name the organization, technology is taking over. We have folks that are working on AI, business intelligence, big data, the types of things we're doing at the Connected Systems Institute and the Data Sciences Institute. Massive support, unlike which we've ever seen before, from Microsoft, Rockwell, Northwestern Mutual, significant investments because of the need for that talent. We can give you a lot of examples, but the specific outcome would be we can give more than 75 additional graduates in those areas per year for a relatively modest investment of $665,000. Nursing, as large as we are, and across the UW system, as many nurses as we educate, the demand, this is probably one of the highest occupational needs we have in the state. So here's an example of where we can increase capacity by taking the collaboration that we have right now and have had in place a partnership with UW-Washington County today, called UWM at Washington County, to the UWM at Waukesha. So bringing that program over and expanding our collaboration with employers who are ready for that type of expansion. But this would also entail collaboration with private universities such as Carroll University, which is already there and has a great lab facility. So County Executive Paul Farrow is very interested in this type of expansion. So there's a lot of increase in the supply of nurses, up to 32 a year with this type of investment. 2 other priorities that are part of the system initiative is, of course, preparing students for success and ensuring the affordability. How do we do that? One of the important ways is through getting students through the pipeline faster, in particular around STEM, which is foundational to so many different areas. We have today programs obviously in engineering, computer science, and many other areas, but to boost those along with natural sciences areas, we are seeking $1 million, which would result in 100 students in addition, as well as 95 transfer students per year. So real growth in those areas, primarily through internship activities. The final area is around enhancing diversity. We have 34% of our undergraduate student population of color. That is, in terms of the absolute numbers, unparalleled across the state of Wisconsin. We are in the most diverse city, in the most diverse region, and we share that responsibility with UW-Parkside. And this is an important area for us to focus on. And specific areas in which this would work is to help with some of the staffing as well as some of the student opportunities and faculty opportunities. And we've got specific metrics. I won't go through those, but you can see some of the metrics where we want to build on the closure and achievement gap that we've received in the past couple of years. So in summary, we're asking for, across 6 initiatives, $4.5 million that we've got metrics and specific outcomes that we've targeted. The workforce demands and the needs, I think, are pretty obvious across the state, and we've worked with specific targeted areas of emphasis on our academic programs that support them in business, engineering, IT, and healthcare. We have already substantial partnerships with industry, which would expect and value this type of additional investment. And bottom line is preparing employees for today's diverse world. Thank you.
Thank you, Chancellor Mone. Chancellor Ford.
So thank you for the opportunity to share UW-Parkside's priorities for investment in the 2019-2021 biennial budget. I will focus on how we are collaborating, innovating, and growing to expand Wisconsin's talent pipeline and how we continue to prepare our diverse student population for success. And I think you're going to hear similar themes as some of the things that my colleagues have mentioned. So here at UW-Parkside, our academic programs serve as the foundation of how we are preparing our graduates for graduate and professional schools and for careers. The UW-Parkside faculty and deans continue to be innovative and collaborative in the development of new academic programs. Since 2015, our faculty have approved 26 new programs that are relevant and responsive to regional needs. We have a record of developing and offering collaborative degree programs. Here is a list of the consortia programs offered with CEOEL and several UW campuses. Note that 2 programs are in development that are consortial in nature, a Master's of Science in Information Systems and a Master of Science in Biotechnology. We are also very proud of our curricular partnerships with UW-Milwaukee in nursing, which I believe is almost 35 years in its experience, and then our engineering pathways that we've had now, I believe, 5 years. And Mark, I look forward to talking with you about expanding nursing in the area, as another hospital has announced an expansion right here in Southeast Wisconsin today. And I very much look forward to enhancing engineering technology with Chancellor Levitt and the folks at UW-Oshkosh. And we are focused on enhancing offerings for adults with some college and no degree through our new online MBA, the online business, or Bachelor of Science in Business Administration, and of course the flex option in Business Administration that will be offered here at UW-Parkside once approval from the Higher Learning Commission. Our academic priorities for investment include certainly strengthening information technology programs, expanding our supply chain management and logistics offerings. And I know this semester in one of our courses, one of our faculty has invited industry partners to serve as guest lecturers, and I can tell you they are not the partners that were here earlier. And again, all of our partners, Uline, Amazon, Cree, and others immediately said yes to visit with our classes. To also support the growing clinical mental health counseling master's programs, to infuse Smart Cities, Smart Futures learning into our curriculum. And this is particularly important as Foxconn Place Racine and their Wisconsin Valley Innovation Center was announced earlier this week, and Racine's goal to become a smart city. And also, as some of my colleagues had mentioned, to strengthen career services and build a stronger bridge between university and industry partners. The other area is that we are certainly focused on a bold goal to increase the number of annual graduates by 50% by 2025. We have been graduating more students over the past decade, and we believe in order to best serve our region and beyond, we need to increase the number of graduates. As I said earlier, we will do this by providing a transformative education for our students and focusing on student success. But as we focus on educating more graduates, enrollment will increase, retention and graduation rates will improve, and our learning environment will evolve and thrive. But it is important that we provide the right academic and student support for our diverse student body. The profile of the incoming new student class is 53% first generation, 36% Pell recipients, and 38% underrepresented minorities. Our percentage of underrepresented minority students is just under 35% for our total student body. And many of our students need to work, and they work half-time or more to fund their education. We know, and research shows, that first-generation Pell-eligible students and students of color often need additional support to persist to graduation. And I am going to show a couple of charts, if you were not in the earlier meeting where Provost Dukoff presented. But this chart shows how enrollment of students of color has changed over the past decade. One of our goals is to become a Hispanic serving institution, and we have been designated an emerging Hispanic serving institution with a goal to enroll 25% Latina and Latino students. But we are concerned about the trends for African American students and are working to change this. So what do we need to improve success for our diverse student population at UW-Parkside? Our student success priorities include, and you can see these, but I will read them, increasing the number of academic advisors to the NACADA student-to-advisor ratio. So an investment in student advising is critically important to us. Hiring additional staff to support our growing population of underrepresented students. Growing our summer bridge programs, and these include our summer scholars, which now enrolls about 25 students. We'd like to double and triple that over the next few years. Our math move-up program, and then certainly developing a pre-college program to serve regional youth with a focus on underrepresented minorities and first-generation students. We are one of 2 campuses that do not have a pre-college program at this time. And we need to add transfer advisors to support our growing transfer student population, and again, bolster career services so that we can build stronger bridges between the university and our industry partners. And last, I just want to say a few words about the Higher Education Regional Alliance. Collaboration, innovation, and growth is important to all of us within the University of Wisconsin system. But I'm very proud to be part of the Higher Education Regional Alliance here in southeastern Wisconsin as we work to improve educational attainment, as we also work to offer and enhance our program array, and to build, again, those stronger bridges between industry and business partners and the universities and colleges. And so 18 higher education institutions in southeast Wisconsin have come together to form this alliance. I am co-leading goal number 1, which is to improve educational attainment across our region. Chancellor Mone is leading this effort on behalf of our colleges and universities. And I think it's this type of collaboration that will help us. And so we are very focused on the investments that allow us to expand our academic program array here at UW-Parkside and certainly support student success.
Thank you, Chancellor. And thank you to all our chancellors for presenting. Board members, do you have any questions for our presenters? Regent Atwell.
Thank you, Regent President. Thank you for the information, and I really appreciate the kind of focus on issues surrounding diversity. I spend most of my time in the north, and some of it in very rural areas, and I just want to comment that I think we would do pretty well to think about the diverse experience of people in the more hardcore rural areas of the state. It's not necessarily your charter at Milwaukee or Parkside, but we literally, part of the reason why we have emergency teaching licenses and that we need them is because in some places they literally can't get people to come there and live and teach, and it threatens the health of those schools. They're the heart of the community, and the health of those schools really is the center of community life. And if you don't have those schools, you don't have the families. And if you don't have the families, you don't have the EMTs and the firefighters and all those other things. So I really wish, in general, as we think about capacity in our mission, I wish we would put our minds, and maybe people are doing more than I know, around the challenges of the North. In particular, I know there's other areas, but I think it's primarily when you get in the northern third of the state. Thank you.
Thank you, Regent Atwell. Regents, any other questions? If not, Regent Klein, go ahead.
Just one little thought. We heard this morning from 4 very brilliant students, UW-Parkside, and one of the women involved in STEM said daycare. And I would just say that to all of you, because I know some of you have daycare centers, but if you're talking underrepresented students, whether they're men or women, it seems to me having daycare centers is not, is a real source of support. So I would just mention that.
Thank you, Regent Klein. President Cross.
I just want to say that I want to thank the chancellors for doing this. Every one of the 13 proposals put forward for how would you spend money to improve your ability to serve and meet the needs of the state and to make students more successful were as impressive as these. So this is that $25 million request and capacity building I think, incredibly important, and I want to keep pressing this issue. This is a really important effort. Thank you.
Let's give our chancellors a round of applause. At this time, I'll ask all board members to stay in place while we complete the roll call vote to move into closed session. Then Regents will relocate to the Oak Room. Vice President Peterson will now read the motion to move us into closed session. Vice President Peterson.
I move that the Board of Regents move into closed session to A, deliberate regarding a recommendation for dismissal with cause of a UW-Milwaukee faculty member as permitted by Section 19851A, B, and F. B, to consider a UW-Oshkosh honorary degree nomination as permitted by Section 19851F. C, to consider acceptance of a confidential gift and the naming of a facility at UW-Stevens Point as permitted by Section 19851E. D, discuss ongoing personnel matters as permitted by Section 19851C and F. E, confer with legal counsel regarding potential litigation as permitted by Section 1985G. And F, consider personnel evaluations of chancellors as permitted by Section 19851C.
Thank you. Motion and second. Roll call vote. Madam Clerk?
Regent Bailing.
Yes.
Regent Peterson.
Yes.
Regent Atwell.
Yes.
Regent Delgado. Regent Evers. Regent Grebe.
Yes.
Regent Hall. Regent Jones.
Yes.
Regent Klein.
Yes.
Regent Milner.
Yes.
Regent Mueller.
Yes.